In today's episode, you're going to find out one of the best things that came out of Waverly, Tennessee in 1913. Welcome to the Licensure Lifeline podcast. This is your host, Matt Lawson, and in today's therapy, we're going to be looking at Bowenian therapy. Murray Bowen was born in the early 1900s in Waverly, Tennessee, and he started his career as a psychiatrist, but after a while realized he didn't really like the individualistic approach to psychology in treating disorders. From this time, he shifted his practice a bit toward really understanding the family as an emotional unit. The basis of his work can be traced back to the National Institute of Mental Health, where he did a lot of observations of families and how they interacted with each other over extended period of times, which he was able to develop the Bowenian family therapy model from. This approach is grounded in the concept that the family is a system of interconnected and interdependent individuals, none of whom can be truly understood in isolation from the system. So, just thinking about what that means and thinking about how much more information we can glean about an individual with some family history, that really makes me think about how this system works and just emphasizes the family as a system and the individual as part of this system, and really learning to understand this individual outside of the system really isn't taking into account the full picture of who they are. Another really interesting aspect of this theory is it takes generations into account and looks at how behavior of the system, behavior of the individuals has been impacted from generational influences over time. Let's go over some of the key concepts within this theory. First, let's talk about the differentiation of self. This is the ability to separate feelings and thoughts. Undifferentiated individuals cannot separate their feelings from their thoughts, which can oftentimes lead to fusion in their relationships to other people. An example of this might be that person in your life who's always had a really close relationship with their family, maybe especially close with their mother, and they acknowledge like how comforted they are by their mother. Maybe they really lean into communication and things like that, but there also is a sense that there's some emotional entanglement there. The mother may have really strong opinions about the individual's life choices, who they date, where they work, how they spend their money, and instead of taking any of that with some sense of balance within, like, thank you for the information and then considering it, the person tends to kind of lead from a place of emotion in their connection to their mother instead, and use that input to really guide their lives, more so than just take the opinion or take the information and use it to form their own opinion. By the way, I do hate always blaming the mom, and I will be aware of that in future podcast. Another concept that's really important within the Bowenian theory is the idea of triangles. These are small relationship units that you may see where two people in the relationship become unstable, and a third person is involved to reduce the intensity and instability. If you've ever done any type of couples counseling, you may have seen this like play out right there in the room, where the partners are imbalanced, and they bring in the therapist to reduce the intensity and instability. Another concept that we're going to look at is family projection process, the process by which parents transmit their emotional issues to their children. This is something that you see a lot of times in pretty dysfunctional families, where the kids almost become like another parent, because of the transmitting of these emotional issues to the children. And kids kind of get forced to grow up pretty fast when that's happening. The last concept here is multigenerational transmission process. That is a mouthful. when I think of this one, I think of the butterfly effect. But basically, this concept looks at how small differences in the levels of differentiation between parents and their children lead to significant differences over multiple generations. So that butterfly effect, a butterfly flaps his wing in one part of the world, you get a tsunami in the other part of the world. That's what I think of when I think of this multi-generational transmission process. These small things that you do now, the little quirks that you might have with the differences in differentiation with parents to child can lead to a big effect generations later. Looking at the practical application of the Bowenian therapeutic approach, you're really trying to increase the family member's awareness of how the family system operates and also how the different members play a role within the system and contribute to the health of that system. One of the things that you're going to see a lot with this approach is the genogram. This is something I remember having to fill out in grad school. It's a great practice for really looking at how intergenerational, interpersonal relationships have impacted the system as a whole and down the line. I mean, it really allows for a lot of just reflection on the past and the people within that family system. Okay, let's go over a couple of questions that might show up on a test. First question, number one, what does the concept of differentiation of self refer to in Bowenian therapy? A, developing personal interest outside of the family. B, reducing one's emotional reactivity to other family members. C, increasing emotional attachment to the family. Or D, encouraging family members to conform to family norms. The correct answer here is B. The differentiation of self involves becoming a more self-sufficient and less emotionally reactive individual. It keeps you from getting fused to family members. Question number 2. What is the purpose of a triangle in the Bowenian family therapy? A, to stabilize relationships by including a third party. B, to exclude a problematic family member. C, to decrease communication between family members. Or D, to increase individual sessions. The correct answer here is A. Triangles tend to stabilize the relationships by reducing the intensity of interactions between the original dyad by involving a third person. Last question. How does the multigenerational transmission process function within families according to Bowen? A. It ensures family traditions are preserved. B. It decreases differentiation between generations. C. It involves the transfer of economic assets. Or D. It influences emotional functions across generations. The answer to this one's going to be D. It describes the transmission of emotional issues and differentiation levels across multiple generations. All right, let's look at a simple little memory strategy here. We're going to do a little mnemonic here with with Bowen, Bowen. The B stands for boundaries and relationships. The O, overarching overarching family connections. The W, weathering emotional storms. E, emotional cutoffs to manage. And N, nurturing self differentiation. Okay, that's going to do it for today's episode on Bowenian therapy. Thanks for joining me today, and remember, keep studying.